You can delete your Lightning transactions. So unlike a blockchain's an append-only database, and every transaction that gets stored on a blockchain is stored there forever. Lightning transactions don't go on a blockchain. Where do they go? A SQL database. And what's great about SQL databases are they're not append-only. They have a delete function. So you can turn off your Lightning node, open up its database in any SQL editor, and say, select all, delete. And you're deleted your transaction history, which is a wonderful privacy tool. Can't do that on a blockchain.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the show. This is Bitcoin Audible, and I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. We've got Super Testnet back on the show today, and I'm really, dude, we dug into so much stuff. It was long overdue to get him back on the show, and I'll go over some of it in just a minute before we get into it. But really quick, this show is brought to you by Ledn. If you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, you can actually get a Bitcoin-backed loan. You can get out a fiat loan against it and actually keep your Bitcoin. Now, if you do this, you need to use somebody who is trusted, who has survived an entire cycle and gone through a terrible bear market where everybody else was declaring bankruptcy and banks were crashing and exchanges were blowing up. And you know what was happening over at Ledn? Nothing. It was boring. It just kept working because they're not stupid. And they do proof of reserves. You can actually check your balance. They do it twice a year. This is a really, really useful tool to have in your kit if you need access to fiat and you don't want to get rid of your Bitcoin. And in the latest Financial Freedom Report, it was number 81 from the Human Rights Foundation. So the Venezuelan bolivar is now on track to do 530% inflation, to be devalued by that much before the end of the year, which means, let's say they were paying $5 for a gallon of gas at the beginning of the year. That means it's going to cost them like $31 or $32 per gallon of gas at the end of the year. You won't hear about this stuff on the news because they don't want to tell you about how currencies collapse, because then suddenly you would get nervous about what your country is doing. If you actually want to stay up to date on this, about what's going on all around the world with financial freedom, with financial repression, the good, the bad, and the open source tools of financial freedom, that is the Financial Freedom Report by the HRF. Link and details are right down in the show notes. Also, get Chroma. I'm actually going to do a video about this pretty soon, but light health has been something that I've been really focused on recently. And that's actually why we talked to Chroma. We have discount code Bitcoin Audible, gets you 10% off everything in the store. That's the blue light blocking glasses, the nightshade, the sky portal, which is a really cool light. I'll actually show it to you in the video, but check it out. Those details are right down below. And then lastly, PubKey. So if you are trying to build censorship resistant apps, if you're trying to build on a new decentralized web and solve the centralized permissioned kind of nightmare that we found ourselves in, PubKey has built a protocol stack, and they've specifically built a full-fledged social app showing the potential, like what you can do with this. And if nothing else, just get the PubKey Ring app. That's PUBKY, by the way, but the PubKey Ring app, and just log in with it. Just do that for me. The links and details are right down in the show notes. All right, so we got Super Testnet back on, and we are digging into a ton of stuff. He has been trolling really hard and been causing lots of stir in his debates and also examples and challenges with Monero people on Lightning being a better privacy tool from a lot of different perspectives on how you look at it than Monero. So we get into the gritty of that and let him tell the story of a bunch of that that's been going on. We get into a bunch of tools he's been building, which he builds literally anything that he just thinks, oh, we should have this, or this would be cool. It's a privacy solution. It's a forum with Zaps. It's a Lightning VPN. It's better submarine swaps. You name it. Like, he just builds stuff. That's why I love hanging out and talking to Super Testnet. We dig into filters. do they actually work? Is it censorship? What does he think about the whole situation? And some other really undervalued tools in the space, actually. And it's great because he had a couple of examples that I have. You can actually look down in the show notes. I've got a couple of different links that he brought up, but listen to the episode so you know what he's talking about when you look at the links. And then also how to play Australian football, which was really interesting. And why, if we want Bitcoin to survive, we want more toxic Bitcoin civil wars. So we've got a lot on the docket today, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode as much as I did. So with that, let's dive right in. This is chat 138. Bitcoin needs more civil war with Super Testnet. And welcome to the show, Super Testnet.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on your show. It's always an honor.
Oh, of course. Like I said, I know we have literally a ton of stuff to catch up on. But just kind of starting off, what have you been up to, man? How you been doing? We haven't talked in probably since, I don't know. Shit, it feels like a year or two almost. It's been a minute.
I think the last time I might have seen you was at the Atlanta Bitcoin conference last year. So that's probably the last time I got to hang out.
No, probably BitBlock Boom, I think.
It was not okay.
Yeah, this one, but the one before, I think we got to hang out. Yeah.
So you said what I've been doing? I've been traveling a lot. I'm on still on the Bitcoin conference circuit doing that. So like next month I'm on my way to Bitcoin Plus in I think Riga, and then there's another one in Istanbul that I'm going to, and I think there's one in Taipei. So doing that all the time. Plus the Atlanta Bitcoin conference. I'm learning a new sport. I'm learning to play football, Australian football, which is cool. So I'm currently in Des Moines, Iowa, where there's this team who's teaching me how to play that sport. So that's kind of weird and fun. Yeah, that's I've been traveling a lot, doing a lot of Bitcoin stuff, a lot of development work, and that's that.
Dude, just because you mentioned the Australian football and you just gave me like the short rundown, I have never heard of this. For the audience, I have never heard of Australian football, and this seems like the weirdest thing ever. But and it it cracks me up that somehow in Des Moines, Iowa, there are Australian football players. But give me the rundown, because this thing is fascinating.
Yeah, it's football. The term football covers a variety of sports. Soccer is also called football, and American football is called football, and the Australians came up with their own version back when the word football could mean anything, and their version's wacky. I think it's most like rugby in terms of like sports that your audience might be familiar with. It's most similar to rugby, but it has a couple of elements of American football. Like forward passes are allowed, but it incorporates volleyball. So if you're doing a forward pass, you have to bump it out of your hand like a volleyball, which is kind of weird. It incorporates elements of what's it called? Basketball. Like there's dribbling in the sport. So they have a ball that's elongated. It's sort of between a rugby football and an American football, where it's like rounder than an American football, but thinner than a rugby football. Anyway, you have this ball and you're supposed to learn to like throw it onto the ground and bounce it up and catch it, because you're only allowed to run for 15 yards or meters. You're only allowed to run for 15 meters before you have to bump it to someone else or kick it to someone else. And so if you don't do that, then you have to like throw it to yourself, which means bouncing it on the ground and then keeping on running with it, which is a really difficult technique to do because, it's elongated and it wants to go just random places. Anyway, yeah, it's a sport that I'm learning to play. And that's what I'm out here in Iowa for.
Are you killing it? Are you like really good at it?
No. I'm not very athletic, and I'm also not into sports. I'm not trained my brain to get into the kind of high gear that it takes for a sport like that. I look down the field and I see a group of people. I'm like, I should probably be there. So I run to them, and by the time I get to them, they're in a new place. I'm like, okay, now where do I go? And that's like, I don't have you have to train your brain to learn to like watch the ball and have good reaction times for that type of thing. And I'm not skilled in that way yet, and maybe never will be.
Not quite like your karaoke.
No,
Would you
definitely
kill?
not as good as him. Yeah,
Karaoke skills up here. Australian football down here.
something like that.
Well, dude, last time you were on the show, I think, what were you building? There was
Probably Hedgehog.
yes, Hedgehog. That's right. It was the Hedgehog episode. Oh man, which means you've done a lot since then because I think you did the privacy. What's the one? It was like it's like a bee or something. What was the name of it?
A bee?
I feel like it was something related to like bees or insects or something was the name that you came up with. I guess I'm totally wrong if that doesn't ring a bell. What was one of the privacy tools you did? You did a privacy tool. I thought it was around the Hedgehog days.
Let me just look it up.
I almost think it was like a Noster.
MSB. You're probably thinking of that.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah. So that was a coin join. Well, it wasn't a coin join. It wasn't complete coin join software. It was a proof of concept that it's possible to do the core part of a coin join, which is the coordination part, the coordination phase. It's possible to do that without a coordinator. So I did a hackathon project where I thought it was possible to do this, came up with the idea, wrote an implementation during a hackathon, and then presented it, and it got a lot of attention because at the time, what the Wasabi had just shut down due to U.S. regulations and the arrest of the developers of Tornado Cash. So the two big coin join tools in the United States basically stopped working. And so I came up with this way. I was like, actually, it's possible to do this without a coordinator. So that got a lot of attention briefly. Of course, it wasn't complete. It was just a hackathon project that showed like there's a lot more that goes into coin joins than just the coordination. Like discovery is also a serious, significant thing, and denial of service protection. I didn't do any of that. So anyway, that was a privacy. One of my contributions to the privacy space was finding a way to do coin joins without a coordinator. Actually, it has been a bit picked up on, not my way of doing it, but another developer named Floppy Disk Guy, 14 million bytes, I think is his name on Twitter, or 140,000 bytes, something like that. He also has a way of doing coin joins he doesn't use an MSB protocol, but he has another way of doing that is also more censorship resistant. He uses Noster for the coordination layer, and you pick a Noster relay and you like do these certain kinds of event kinds. So it's kind of, his protocol's neat, and he's actually working on his. I'm not working on MSB. So if you're looking for robust censorship resistant coin join software, I recommend taking a look at Joinster, which is by Floppy Disk Guy, and he's actually doing it. He's working on it, active development.
Joinster. I'll check this one out. I want to say I actually heard about this, but I haven't actually investigated it at all. I'll try to remember this one in the show notes.
I reviewed the code base for it, and he's got an Electrum plugin for it, and I think he's working on a standalone client as well. And it's a really cool protocol, and uses Nostr for a unique thing. So check it out.
Hell yeah! All right, I'll have that link. I think I got it. I think I see it. Floppy at Joinster. Yeah, that should be him. Well, sweet. Well, give me the rundown on actually, you know what? Since we're on privacy, let's talk about the Monero stuff, because this has been really funny to watch. And, I guess it's just kind of like natural that everybody's like super defensive and gets like really angry when, when things aren't perfect, or when, it turns out.
Or when I troll them.
Or when you troll them. But for anybody who hasn't been following you, which is sad, but there's got to be a couple of them out there that doesn't know what's been going on and getting to kind of read the whole Monero back and forth, and the people who are just not happy with you. Give like kind of the history of what's been going on there, and your trolling in this.
It started a while back when I moved to Mexico. I moved to Mexico for a while to help start a BitDevs down there. And one of the guys who was kind of loosely affiliated with the Bitcoin community down there he's into Monero, and he's somewhat of an influencer on the topic in the Monero community. So he and I started getting into it. I don't like Monero. He does. And he invited me to come onto his podcast to talk about Monero. And in the lead up to it, I decided to find out how to trace Monero, because this is the big claim on the Monero website. It says Monero is untraceable. I was like, I don't believe anything's impossible, so I'm going to try and figure out how it's traced. I started researching. I looked at tools by like CipherTrace, where they made a tool for tracing Monero, and Chainalysis has one. So I watched like interviews with them about how their software works, and I started writing my own based on the principles I learned. And but on the day that I arrived at this podcast, I had completed a Monero tracing tool called Examiner and published that on my GitHub, like I do with all my projects. So our podcast was like, we would pick a Monero transaction, and my tool would try to identify the sender. Sometimes it can do it, like 1 in 5 times with 80% confidence level, it can do it. The rest of the time it can't do it. But we were exploring it. I was going over how it works, and he was very upset about this. He was like, "No, this isn't right. Monero's untraceable. It can't be done." And so we did this whole podcast about that with us going back and forth. During that podcast, Luke Parker, who's a lead Monero dev, came on and wanted to talk about this. So then he and I did a separate podcast on Seth for Privacy, his podcast, where we did a debate on Monero privacy and whether it's traceable and versus Lightning and stuff. So that since then, I have found that the funnest way to troll the Monero community on this, while also educating people, is to do these challenges where I issue a challenge and I say, I will pay a Monero address of your choice. You pay a Lightning invoice of my choice, and we'll see who learns more about the recipient. Mm-hmm. Very often they will say, Lightning has terrible privacy, but I think it's got better privacy than Monero. So I do these challenges. And so far I think I've done like 8 of them. On all 8, I've been able to trace my own coins. And that's one of the things that upsets them. They're like, well, of course you can trace your own coins. Like you made the transaction. Of course, you know where you sent it. And I'm like, but you don't know where you sent it when you sent it on Lightning. Yeah. So there's a big difference there. But I'm always able to identify where I sent the money, give cryptographic proof of how much I sent, how much landed in their address. And this is how Monero is typically traced. Like they'll get, so it's similar to like a marked bills attack with physical currency. They will send the target some money and then watch the blockchain to see what happens to it next. Okay. And so like you can't do that on Lightning because there's no blockchain. And that's why I often say, it protects you against certain attacks better than Monero does, attacks that are actually widely deployed. So that's one of the things I've been doing is those challenges. And then the other thing I did, just so I can have something to link to whenever someone says Monero is untraceable, I went through and got a list of times when Monero has been successfully traced, from like court cases where Monero comes up. You can identify. You can like do word searches and stuff and find this stuff. So I went and found, I think, 6 criminal cases where Monero was traced and then the criminal was convicted of the crime, and put it together and made like this website called moneroleaks.xyz, where I go over how it's been traced and then what types of data it leaks that lead to it being traced, and a list of the attacks that are used to trace Monero. So that I point to now whenever sometimes I go on Twitter and I search for people who are saying Monero is untraceable, which is what they're saying all the time. And then I'll just be like, no, it's not. Here's examples where it's been traced. So, so those are some of the things I've been doing.
Pissing people off in the process.
Yeah, it does. It definitely pisses them off, which is quite fun.
Which makes it quite fun. This is always one of the things that I've kind of felt that there was a bit of a fundamental disconnect between privacy at the base layer, is that like the consensus model requires that the triple entry accounting concept, right? Is that there is a public ledger underneath all of this. And your cryptographic assumptions in particular become far more complex if you're adding privacy to that, as well as just the cryptography of like, can you sign for this transaction? Mm-hmm. The audit is vastly simpler if you could just look at balances and do math in your head. Like, okay, yeah, this basically checks out. The system has not been modified or corrupted in any way because balances are obvious. And privacy, like I don't know of a single privacy tool that hasn't had to evolve quite a bit and pretty quickly, because the tools to uncover privacy and the different avenues of attack are so vast. Like it's a constant moving. It's a little bit like the fight against spam almost, actually. It's a moving target always, because the environment dictates so much about whether or not you can maintain privacy and how. Because just your mode of communication matters, like, hugely. And what is even happening.
What operating system are you using matters.
Yeah, yeah.
If your operating system is spying on you, it doesn't matter what techniques you're using for privacy. Like every screen is shared with someone, and every stroke of your keyboard is shared with someone, and then you're like, but how did I
get caught? Monero's untraceable. It's like, well, you have ChatGPT plugged into your Windows operating system, and it's reading everything that you do. So yeah, it doesn't really help. But like that's what I'm getting at. Is that, like, it's such a huge and like, there's no one solution to privacy, and even like a mild change in the environment, like plugging an AI into your operating system, that just seems like this thing of convenience, can fundamentally change like how you connect to something, and like where in your entire stack of this process, your device, your software, your environment, which network you connect to, whatever, all of those things have massive fundamental consequences for privacy. And so doing it at the base layer adds quite a bit of complexity and potential drawbacks, while also putting it in an environment where, as soon as it gets undermined at any layer in the stack of, like, again, your environment, your operating system, anything like that, it's like okay, so we had this significant trade-off that cannot guarantee anything, like, over any significant length of time, because things are just going to change. I mean, and I think you've just kind of proven it, and I think it's only going to get better when it comes to figuring out how this works with Monero, or tracing Monero or any other privacy
or Lightning?
coin.
Lightning is traceable too.
Lightning. Exactly. Which means that if it's on a layer 2, if it's some way to extend the simplicity of the assurances that are offered at the base layer, then layer 2 can actually keep up. It can actually evolve and try out the 1,000 different things needed to figure out the 2 really good solutions every single time the environment changes and the attacker changes and the operating system changes, et cetera, et cetera. Or at least the more and more I've thought about it. And this is, I am like super, like, privacy is like one of the fundamental things for me, like, it was kind of a fundamental cypherpunk, a part of the cypherpunk philosophy is that this is about sovereignty and privacy. So I'm not like discounting it. I increasingly think, the more and more I think about how the architecture of this thing and how technology progresses, is that privacy just kind of has to be at higher layers, at least in my thinking.
I don't know. You say it has to be. I don't know if it has to be. If you do it at the base
It's
layer,
optimal.
there are trade-offs is the thing. So you have to decide, is it worth the additional difficulty of auditing in order to have privacy at the base layer? I don't think it's unreasonable to say that's a fine trade-off, but it's not clear cut. Like, it depends on what you're really seeking. So.
Yeah, it's not an obvious answer. Yeah. So explain. You said that when you paid Lightning, you didn't know where it was going to. How does that work? What was give me the context of the Lightning transaction and kind of the privacy implications there, because, like, when I think about, like, in receiving over Lightning, like, paying in Lightning is huge. It's like, has a significant privacy benefit. Like, if somebody pays me, I have no idea where the hell it's coming from. And that's what I usually, like, when I'm talking to people that, like, I work with, or anybody who asks me, is like, I say, put money into a Lightning wallet, put Bitcoin into a Lightning wallet, and then just pay out over Lightning and don't receive. Whereas receiving an invoice usually has a route, identification of your node, and, all of that stuff with the invoice amount. Is there a way to receive privately so that you're actually not giving away your location?
So I want to start by mentioning what when people talk about receiver privacy on Lightning, it's very common, including on the website lightningprivacy.com. It's very common to say Lightning has very poor receiver privacy. And it does leak some data. When you receive money on Lightning, you do leak some data. However, I think it's even fair to say that in most cases, it's bad. Like it's the amount of data you leak makes it a bad receiver privacy. So I confess that. However, I want to do a relative comparison and say, let's compare it to Monero, which is the lead privacy coin, because then it looks a lot better. So on Monero, they will often say Monero has perfect receiver privacy. The Monero people will say it has perfect receiver privacy because if someone just looks at a random transaction on the blockchain, they see two outputs. The outputs don't say what amount is in them, and there's like a random. They call it a one-time public key. They call it that. I don't completely agree with their terminology here, but they say there's a one-time public key that's generated just for that transaction. Monero address is not, or address reuse is, according to some people, just not a thing in Monero. I think it is, but you look at this and you'll see. So if you're just a third-party observer looking at the blockchain, you see one of these outputs. You cannot map or at least I don't think it's possible to map the outputs in that transaction to the original Monero address that someone gave to the sender. So they will say this makes it perfect receiver privacy. And then they will come and say, on Lightning, it has terrible receiver privacy because the invoice leaks your public key. Okay, well, just a second here. If you're a third-party observer, you don't see the invoice. If you're a third-party observer to a Lightning transaction, I don't give the invoice to third parties. I give it to the person who I'm actually transacting with.
Yeah. And it's a one-time invoice. It only works.
It's also one time
for the one payment.
So that, in my opinion, that makes it better than Monero, because on Monero, what you start with is a blockchain that anyone can view, and they can see every transaction, and they can see all of the outputs, and they can start their investigation there. On Lightning, first, because there's no blockchain, you have to start subpoenaing people who might be involved in the transaction. You have to say, like, maybe like a common routing node is Bitrefill, or was it LN Big or whatever, and you have to start subpoenaing these people and say, we need all of your records because we're trying to find someone. We need to know what invoice is involved. Like the starting point is much more difficult than it is on Monero. Secondly, the reason people say Lightning has poor receiver privacy, the primary reason is that when you create a Lightning node, your node or a Lightning wallet, your node or your wallet creates a public key, and every time you create an invoice, you put that public key in your invoice. So they will say it has bad receiver privacy because you're always giving your public key to whoever you're sending money to. If you're a third-party observer, Lightning's better because there's no blockchain to go to see the invoices. If you're a first party, if you're the sender, very often in privacy attacks, it starts with somebody sending money to a target. Like you say, I want to find out who this person is. I'm going to send them money and then try and watch what happens to that money. So so very often your adversary is the person who sent you money in the scenario where you're trying to guard against certain types of attacks, like an Eve attack or a poisoned output attack or a timing analysis attack. Almost always starts with the sender being the attacker. So in that situation, they will say Lightning has bad receiver privacy because you always give away a public key. But compare it with Monero. In Monero, you give away a public key as well. Every Monero address has actually two public keys in it. There's something called a view key, and there's another key in there as well. And so you should give two public keys with Monero, and you only give one with the Lightning Network. And on Monero, there's like the sender gets a cryptographic proof that the money he sent to this Monero address is actually in that Monero address. He can prove it cryptographically. Lightning doesn't give you that, because in Lightning, we have this concept called dummy public keys. They're part of the blinded routes spec, and they've been supported in Lightning since even before we had blinded routes. They were supported in the beginning. You can put a fake public key in your or a one-time public key in your Lightning invoices. And most software doesn't do this, but you can do
That's
it.
funny. I don't even think I knew that. Like, that should totally be the default if that's actually
Well, it
like
has
widely
trade-offs.
supported. Okay.
It has trade-offs. So one of the trade-offs of doing this is that the way that proofs of payment work on the Lightning Network is you prove that a particular public key signed a message. You say he signed that if he reveals this pre-image, that constitutes the proof of payment. If you put a new public key in every time, then the proof isn't worth very much, because you're proving some random public key. But who does that belong to? If you can't prove it belongs to your recipient, then it's like there are trade-offs to using these. So most software doesn't do it. But there is software that lets you create a new public key for every invoice. Valet Wallet does this by default. It's a Lightning wallet that's available on the Google Play Store and they release APKs on GitHub. There's software by Ben Carman called TransLND that lets you change your Lightning invoice public key for every payment. And you can also do it using proxies. So what I always do in my Monero challenges is, there's two other ways to do it. Yeah, you can turn on blinded routes if you have an LND wallet, or if you have a wallet that supports LND. Many of them, like Zeus, have a toggle for turning on blinded routes. If you do that, you'll always put in a dummy public key in all of your invoices. And then the other thing you can use is Bolt 12, which uses blinded paths by default. But we can get into this. I don't think it's very good at this because it puts another public key in there that is specific to your node. It replaces that one with another one. And so I think it does a bad job of fixing this problem. Anyway, so you put a public key in there typically, and if you don't use one of these tools that gives you a new one every time, then you're reusing that information, and then the sender can, even then he doesn't get proof that the public key in the invoice actually signed the payment. It's a default behavior. He doesn't know that is your actual public key. You could be running proxy software and then forwarding that payment on to someone else. But the guess is if your public key is in there and it's a well-known node and it's not a proxy, then you're probably the recipient. And that's kind of how proofs of payment work on Lightning. They're not, the term proof in the phrase proof of payment is not really true. It's not really a proof. It's a likely, or it's not even, it's hard to even say that because anyone can just spoof it. So I don't know. It's a thing. It's the only thing it's the only cryptographic part of the payment that we actually get proof of.
It's likely only because of how the default behavior of most people using Lightning is, rather than technically likely.
Yeah. This also comes up in the community in the Zaps specification. When people started using Lightning for Zaps on Nostr, they quickly realized they could zap themselves. And they could create, to any third-party observer, it looks like a proof of payment. Like you can see the invoice, it's been signed, even by a well-known public key, and you can see the pre-image. But if you're just creating invoices and then revealing their pre-image, you can make it look like you've received thousands and thousands of zaps, or millions, or much, much money that you didn't really receive. So it doesn't really prove anything. And this Zap specification now has like a warning, like don't trust these as cryptographic proof, even though they have something that says it's a proof of payment. It's really it's not. It's just not one. Okay, so anyway, what was I?
Talking about the public key situation in Monero as comparison.
Yeah, so it's bad that you leak a public key by default, or with most software, you leak a public key when you're making a Lightning invoice. But if you compare it with Monero, it's better in terms of third-party observers, and it's also better in terms of first-party observers. Another reason it's better is that the public key that you leak in Monero is one that provably receives money. Like you can cryptographically prove that public key controls a certain amount of money. On Lightning, the public key you give in an invoice is only used for signing messages, like not Bitcoin messages, but just like Lightning gossip and stuff like that. So that public key never holds any funds. It's actually it's a better public key to reveal. It's still bad to leak it, but it's better than the one you reveal in Monero. So anyway, for all these reasons, I say yes. If you don't use any additional tools, receiver privacy is bad on Lightning, but it's better than what you get in Monero. And that's the That's the framing that I like to look at it from when I'm trolling Monero people. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what proxy software do you use and or recommend? Like, have you done that specifically in one of your challenges or whatever? Used a like a
Yeah.
trampoline payment thing?
I
And
often go to the website lnproxy.org. It's a
oh,
wonderful and easy website for gaining privacy on Lightning or gaining receiver privacy or improving your receiver privacy. What they do is they run a copy of LND. I think it's LND they're running. They run a copy of LND and they make it so that you can paste an invoice on their website. They will copy that invoice. They'll make what's called a clone, and this clone is the same invoice but with their public key instead of yours, and fees added on top. So if you give them a 1,000 sat invoice, they'll give you back one that's 1,010 sats. So you have the sender pay this this proxy invoice, and the secret that the proxy has to reveal in order to settle the payment is one that you created as the recipient. The proxy doesn't know it. So the only way they can get that secret, the pre-image to the payment, is by paying your original invoice. If they pay your original invoice, then you have to reveal the secret in order to settle it. And once they have the secret, then they can settle the invoice from the original sender.
that's funny. So they literally do the exact same thing Lightning does with payment routes, except they do an additional layer of routing through the invoices itself. That's actually pretty
They
funny.
do an additional layer of routing on the
simple.
invoices in order to hide your public key.
Yeah,
and it's quite effective.
That's pretty dope, actually, and really simple.
There's a few things that are cool about that software. One is it's free and open source, so anyone can download it and run it. And their website has like a selection tool where you can select from different people who are running it. So you can even do it multiple times. You can just pick one at random, they call it invoice wrapping. Create a proxy invoice on that one. Take that proxy invoice now and wrap it again with another one. You can just pick another one who's running this software and then just do that like 4 or 5 times. And it's like making another onion layer on top of the regular Lightning onion hops just to hide your public key. Like Monero doesn't have this. This doesn't exist on Monero. There's no such thing as transaction chaining on the Monero blockchain. Well, I think it's actually possible to do transaction chaining on Monero, but no one has implemented it, and so it's not
Probably because
yet.
they think their privacy solution or their privacy problems have already been solved, and they just get angry if if you suggest otherwise, rather than thinking that this is a never-ending problem and you have to make improvements. And there's no privacy solution. eCash is great, but it's also not a full solution. Like I
don't think there is a full solution to privacy.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a fundamental principle of information theory that any interaction between any two people reveals information about each. I don't think there's a way to completely eliminate that because it's a fundamental principle of information theory. If any information is given, that's a leak. And if you don't give any information, then you're not interacting with someone. So they're not paying you. So I don't know if there's a complete solution to privacy, or I don't think there is. But certainly the tools that we have available on Lightning are quite advanced. Like there's really cool privacy technology that's been built into Lightning, like the onion routing layer. Then there's like additional tools on top of Lightning, like the proxy software. So there's really cool stuff in Lightning. Well, that's one of the reasons I like to do these challenges, is to highlight, like, a lot of people aren't aware of all the work that's been done to make privacy software for the Lightning Network. So by doing my challenges, I expose more people to those things.
Dude, I would really love, because I actually thought about, and as if I had the time to actually manage and or pay somebody to build something like this, but the lnproxy.org is such a great idea, and the fact that it works that simply too is great, because like it would just be awesome to be able to plug that into a wallet. Like I have NordVPN and Mullvad and these things, and they're just like an extension, right? As I just install them on the operating system, and then I can have like a simple click and it's on, click it's off, like sort of situation. Is it like, I think they should be treated and thought about like VPNs, and you literally quote unquote install them in your wallet, whatever Lightning wallet you use, and you can just turn them on with like a little checkbox, and you can have multiple. And even better is that you have such a perfect monetization environment too. You don't even have to, like, you could maybe charge like a monthly thing just to have access, but you could just do that as like a barrier, like a filter for, a bunch of randos or bots or something connecting to you. But there, you don't need to do that. You could just do a fee. You could
Mm-hmm.
just do a set fee per invoice, or percent of the payment or something. And you've just got it so that like you've always got basically free VPN until you need it. And you can not use it for 6 months, and then just turn on that checkbox when you're making a payment or receiving a payment. And then you pay for it in that one instance,
Even better than doing stuff you never. It's very often that you don't realize you needed to be private until after the fact, until after somebody's found you. Then you're like, oh, I should have been private. So it might be even better, rather than making it a checkbox, or maybe you have it as a checkbox, make it so you have to turn it off.
Yeah.
It's on by default.
Yeah.
It's going to try and proxy all your invoices. Of course, it costs more is the thing. You're not, one of the things that Lightning wallets do, they tend to do anyway, is they want to minimize the number of hops along a route. Because what most wallets are after is user experience, and every hop adds an additional delay and an additional cost. So most wallets will be like, we want the best user experience, we want fees to be minimal, and we want speed to be best. We want to maximize the speed. So they try and, even though the Lightning Network has onion routing built in, they'll try to be like, let's do 1 hop or 2, and try not to go above 2 hops to get to our destination. But that's bad for your privacy. The more hops you have on an onion route, the better it is. The harder it is to find out who it was, because you have to get each of those nodes to collude and tell you the information in their database. So it's just better to have more hops, and because of that, you just adding more hops is great. I also made a tool on this node. There's a thing that I don't like about the LN proxy software, which is that the way they design the software requires you to run a web server in order to receive, in order to use their API. And most people who are running this software are running it on Tor. They're running it on, they're running on like Umbrels and such. And when you're running this proxy software on Tor, then people can only use it if they first get out their Tor browser, then go to the website, then paste the onion invoice in, or if they have a client that has Tor built in, they can do it. But it increases the friction.
Way better to do it over the Lightning network, like kind of like a Bolt 12 thing, is you're actually doing that negotiation directly on the network, so you don't have to have, no, that makes sense.
You could do it a terrible way, which is my way. I wrote proxy software as well. You can find it at rack.supertestnet.org. I call it the rack because you're stretching your Lightning payment like you're on the torture rack. But you're if you go there, I wrote proxy software you can use, and it advertises itself over Nostr. So even if you're running it on an Umbrel or something, you're advertising yourself on Nostr relays is available to do these swaps. You set your fees and such. And then when people come to rack.supertestnet.org, they can first of all earn money by being one of these proxies. But second of all, they can communicate with a wider array of proxies, because they're all doing it on, because you can run it on like an Umbrel or something, and still be available on the whole network. And I did that because I don't know how to do Lightning gossip. I know it's possible to do Lightning gossip, but I know how to do Nostr a lot better, and it's easier. So that's what I did.
I've been interested in, I think you were in the PubKey like beta chat, or if I remember correctly. And I've been like constantly focused on looking at 3 different things, which is PubKey, the pair stack with like key in them, and then Nostr. And I have been trying to, like, all of them seem to be like interesting in like one area specifically, and then have a trade-off in some other area. And one of the things that interests me about Nostr in particular is it does seem easy to build on. And maybe speak to that a little bit, because I really think this is one of the most fundamental problems. I think this is a fundamental problem for Bitcoin security and Bitcoin resiliency. Is how do you solve the network centralization underneath it, of
Mhm.
DNS, of having to deal with port forwarding and web servers and everybody going through platforms and all of this stuff. Even though it's not in the Bitcoin, I think people discount how powerful solving the layers around Bitcoin and the architecture around it in the network, in the internet itself, is so fundamental to actual Bitcoin security. So maybe talk a little bit to that and what you've seen, if you've explored all three of those that I just referenced, or just specifically Nostr, if that's the one you kind of are more familiar with.
Well, I'll say that one thing or one thing that's not great about Nostr is that it doesn't solve the problem you mentioned, which is DNS the naming problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So if when you use a Nostr relay, they're typically there are some that are on Tor, but most of them are just a domain name at a URL. They're like domus dot or relay.domus.io, or I don't know, Nostr.ban has a relay. So there's a lot of relays that are just a URL, and that makes it really easy. Like, you can easily create lists of them. You can randomly select them when you're making a Nostr app, or you can have like a preferred ones. It makes it really easy to identify what relays are out there, put them into your app, and have a bunch of backups, so that if some of them go down, you've got plenty of time to update your app and replace them, and you're just using your backups in the meantime. That makes it really easy. However, you're not solving the domain name problem, and so it's very easy to censor them. You could, for a censorship-resistant network, all it takes is someone finding one of these lists of Nostr relays and then banning them all. Like, specifically ICANN, if the Internet Committee banned all these IP addresses, and or not just the IP addresses, but the domain names themselves, Nostr wouldn't work anymore. Or you'd have to find new ones, and
It
then
would
hope
take a
those don't
long
get
time
banned.
to adjust, and it would be a nightmare for anybody who had relied on it and was very normie rather than technically inclined. It would just be like, wait, what the hell
Right.
just happened to this whole network? Yeah.
The Tor ones would still work because Tor has a quasi solution to the naming problem. So those ones would still work. And if your app happens to have Tor on and is using some Tor relays as backups, your app would still work. It would be slow, though. And Tor's solution, quote unquote, to the naming problem is just have a directory of people who promise not to censor that, which is the directory nodes on Tor. So it's really just a different ICANN that's run by the Tor Foundation, and they promise not to. They promise to be good. So it's not really a solution. It's just giving the problem to someone else and saying, "Well, we don't trust the Internet Committee, so we'll trust this Tor committee instead." I don't know how PubKey solves this. Do you have information on? John has, like, a big thing of his pitch for PubKey is that PubKey solves the naming problem.
Yes. Yeah. So PubKey uses Picard. It's PKARR. And this is specifically one of my core things with both the pair stack and PubKey, that I feel like maybe it's one piece of each of the puzzles. And because Nostr is it's really just kind of like a set of standards for how to sign shit and send it to people. It
Mm-hmm.
really is kind of simple, and it could almost just be it could be put just right on top of pair and PubKey, really. Like, it doesn't really need the relay, aside from the fact that you have compatibility issues because people built a bunch of stuff already. But fundamentally, it doesn't need it. But both of them just separately use DHTs. So PubKey uses the BitTorrent DHT, the mainline, and Pair uses the Hyper DHT, which is the one they've just built for their completely separate protocol. So it's smaller, not quite as censorship resistant because there's just not as many DHT nodes out there, but there's like 2 million or some shit like that for BitTorrent,
For BitTorrent.
for mainline. And what they do is that you literally publish your public key in the DHT, and then inside of that blob in the DHT with your public key, you can basically just update whatever you want there. And that can be a web server, that can be a pair stack key, that can be it doesn't really matter. You can point to anything. It's just completely agnostic, but it's just directions for how to find you. So let's say you have a relay and your relay goes down and it's just a normal DNS. Well, you can update in your Picard blob or whatever to point to a completely new DNS, put all your stuff on it, and people will actually find you through the DHT. So when they punch in your public key, they don't know that they're selecting a different DNS or a different IP address or whatever and going to find you. They just find you again, and it doesn't matter where you went to. So it's just kind of like a layer on top of it that just says whatever you're using to host, which it also could just be an IP address in the DHT. It doesn't have to be a DNS. You don't have to have an address for any reason unless you want
It sounds like there's almost always an address.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really that if you're not using an IP address, then you're not really solving the domain name problem, because now you have to look up what IP address that belongs to.
Wait. If you're not using an IP address? I'm saying that you can use an IP address just like you could with peer-to-peer, but the connection software that is being used needs to talk to it like BitTorrent.
That's also true of Nostr, though. Like, if you can make you can run a Nostr relay on a bare IP address. It's not going to throw an error or anything. And then you could make a profile on Nostr that points to that that IP address and says that's where you'll find my posts. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that really counts as solving the domain name problem. It's like, what you're hoping is that people will give out this string, their public key, and their public key includes an IP address where you can talk to them. But if the Internet Committee wants to ban traffic to your IP address, they can just do it. They can just say, well, I don't know if they could do it, but the Internet relays could. They could just say, we're not forwarding traffic to that destination. That the ISPs could do it.
But there's a really important core difference in my opinion as to why both of these actually kind of do solve it. They solve it in a little bit of a hacky way, but you don't have to know where the IP address is. So because when you just have the public key, you can find wherever the new location is. So think about it in the context, you use the Lightning compared to Monero. So think about it in comparison to relays on Nostr. Mm-hmm. After your DNS goes down of like nostrwine whatever, like your address, and that will no longer connect. Well, then when you come back online and that DNS has been censored, well, then that relay is gone. And you have to start messaging somebody on Telegram or Twitter. Where's the new nostrwine relay? And it's like, did they set it back up yet? Where, what's going on? And then you have to go find a new list and find a new DNS and all of this stuff. And then you go and you manually punch it back in. Whereas because the ID, your ability to get the information is still dependent on your knowledge of the address. Whereas in the Picard situation is that if you just have their public key, all you ever have to do is save that public key. And it doesn't matter what happens to the DNS. So if they block the DNS or they block the IP address, well, they put it up on a new IP address. They put it up on a new machine. They put it up on a new DNS.
But how do they find the new IP address?
The DHT. So it updates in the DHT. You look up that public key in the DHT to find the new location.
You have to connect to the DHT. And,
sure.
And if the node that you're talking to doesn't respond to that, if he says, I'm blocking this IP address, then what do you do?
No, but you're not talking to that IP address to get the information from the DHT. You're talking to just general DHT nodes, the mainline nodes, which is redundant to your whole section of the DHT. So it might be 20 to 50 nodes that all have that public record in the DHT, and it can only actually be censored if ICANN actually shuts down a whole array of addresses that would take up that block of the DHT.
Yeah, so that's the thing. That the way that we do censorship resistance in Nostr is also to say your public key, your end profile, should have multiple relays in it, so that in order for them to censor you, they have to shut down not just one relay, but all of the ones in your string, in your identifier. And it sounds like the solution is the same thing here. It's like the person who finds your posts is the DHT nodes. And in order for them to censor that, they have to shut down all of those DHT nodes.
It's actually the reverse situation, because in Nostr, the onus is on the users to figure out what relays to connect to find the person that they're following again. So like let's say you have like one person and then 1,000 followers. If that one person gets censored, then those 1,000 followers all need to update in order to figure out how to find that one person again. Whereas in the Picard situation, is the DHT is just insanely difficult to censor. Like, it's just not going to be manageable for somebody to do that because of the 1 million to 2 million nodes that are feeding out the DHT blobs. Which means that in that situation, the 1,000 people who are following don't have to do anything. Just the one person who is censored has to change the pointer to where the information goes to, and all 1,000 people doing nothing at all will automatically find them again as soon as the DHT has new information. So it's the reversed onus as to whose responsibility it is to get around the censorship. And the person who is being censored could have multiple options already in the DHT, such that if one of them does get censored, then another one just kind of fills the slot in. Like, it just automatically is just there again. So it can be basically done where there's no hiccup, there's no interruption. That's the word I'm looking for. There's no interruption in the connection between the group and the person being followed.
So I posted in the chat on this Riverside FM. I posted something called an end profile, which is a standard that's used in Nostr for sharing, for telling people how to find you on the network. And it includes the end profile string includes a pub key and a list of one or more relays. Mm-hmm. So if you decode this one, which I'm going to do at Nostr helpers, which is a tool that I wrote. Wish I could share my screen so you could see what I'm doing here.
Nostr.helpers? I think you can share your screen.
I can? Oh, sweet. Let me do that then. So yeah, it's just a website on my GitHub called Nostr helpers. Anyway, I'm going to pull this npub or nprofile and paste it into here and convert it. And you can see here, it's not just a public key, which is what this is. It also includes a relay. So this means that, like, if you can put multiple in there. Actually, I thought I had multiple in here. The one I usually share has multiple. So usually it's like I also use Nostr. So my end profile is usually kind of longer. Anyway, this string includes multiple relays. And that makes it so it's that interruptionless thing. If relay.damus.io goes down, people who got my identifier are also following me at Nostr. So then when I create a new set of relays, now they're following me at my new set that includes that has Damus replaced. So because of this on Nostr, if you're using end profiles to share your identity with people, then you have that seamless thing that you were talking about, where if one relay goes down, if they censor one relay, unless they censor all of the ones in your end profile, then you have a seamless transition to your new relays.
So my question would be, if they do censor all of them, how do you get the new information about your end profile to the people?
That's when there is an interruption in that case. Okay. But I think it's the same thing with the DHT model. Because of the DHT model, if they censor all of the DHTs, then there's an interruption in the service, and you have to get you have to find new DHT servers in order to find the information you need to connect to someone.
As I understand it, you don't, because the person who owns the private key for Picard can just update, and you can still just find.
But how do you find them? You can't talk to any DHT nodes.
So you're saying somebody censored the entire BitTorrent network?
Yeah, which is very common. Those nodes are among the ones that are most commonly censored by firewalls. Yeah, so that's a I think what I'm trying to say here is that.
But we're talking about like 1 million nodes here. I don't know if I don't think I'd ever heard of a time in which the BitTorrent network was totally inaccessible.
I haven't used BitTorrent. But what I will say,
or the
on
mainline
Tor,
DHT.
it very commonly happens, especially because when I'm traveling in a country like China, it very commonly happens that I'm trying to access Tor and I can't easily do it. Like I have to keep on cycling through different Tor relays because all the Tor relays are publicly known, and China just blocks them all on all of their firewall, all of their routers. All the known ones. So like people spin up new ones and then those ones aren't blocked, but you have to like keep clicking the button, keep clicking refresh in order to randomly get one of the ones that's not on their list, one of the new ones. I imagine it would be the same thing with BitTorrent. Like if they're assuming they're doing a similar thing, then if you can't contact the BitTorrent nodes because they're all publicly known and they're all blocked, or most of them are publicly known and most of them are blocked, then you're going to have a hard time finding the information you need to talk to someone. And it's kind of, to me, it's similar to like the what I would do is I would start putting my identifiers of an IP address that I'm posting at inside of my identity string. And that's what we do in Nostr. But if you're using that solution, you're using the Nostr solution.
Having to sell Bitcoin hurts, especially when you are certain it is going to be worth more in the future. But you can actually get access to the fiat without selling it by using a Bitcoin-backed loan. Maybe this is for an emergency. Maybe this is for an investment that you think will do really well, but it won't beat Bitcoin because it's monetizing. Or this is actually something that you know you'll get back, but the timing just isn't right, and you don't want to let Bitcoin go for that span. This is why Ledn was built. They let you borrow against your Bitcoin quickly and easily. And Bitcoin is the ultimate collateral. There is no more perfect thing to use securely in this setup, and something that you can verify with their proof of reserves that they do. There are no monthly payments if you don't want. You pay it off at your pace. There's no penalties for early payment. There's no finder's fee. It is quick and simple to get your funds. I think their turnaround right now is like 12 hours. And I don't know why every Bitcoin company doesn't do this. Everybody who's at least holding Bitcoin for other people. But they do a proof of reserves so that you can confirm that your balance is there. And something that made me really happy recently is they just cut their Ethereum loans. They cut their yield product. They cut their non-custodied loans at lower rates. And so they now offer one simple hyper-focused thing: custodied, secure, easy, Bitcoin-backed loans. Use someone with a good track record who's done over $10 billion in loans, available in over 100 countries. They do proof of reserves, and they've made it through the toughest times in the market without having a single problem. There's no credit check. There's no hassle. It's simple. This is why Ledn.io exists. Get the value of your Bitcoin without having to sell it. Remember to read up on how the collateral works. They're really good at reaching out and making sure that everything stays balanced. Remember that Bitcoin is volatile, so do not overextend. But if you know how to use it, this could be a huge benefit to your Bitcoin stack and give you optionality in accessing fiat without it being that selling Bitcoin is your only option. I've been a very happy customer. Check them out. The link and details are in the description. I guess the idea would be, or the assumption would be, which I think is actually a fair assumption, is that it's a whole hell of a lot harder to make it impossible to communicate to 1 million DHT nodes than it is to talk to, 5 relayed DNS addresses. And so the idea is it's a much larger degree of resiliency. In fact, I don't know of a network comparatively that would be more censorship resistant than the mainline DHT due to its size and like breadth, because you would still have a DHT version that was local, and most banning or firewall or whatever is kind of like to foreign connections, whereas like there's also DHT like within the country, and nodes are coming in and out of it, and IP addresses are changing constantly.
It's fascinating. You said there's about 2 million nodes. Where did you get? I doubt that figure, because like Tor only has about 3,000 nodes on the whole Tor network.
I read an article that tried to, and I could be wrong. Nodes. I think it's like 1 million or something. But I remember thinking that like, holy crap, is it really number of nodes? Here, let me Perplexity see if it comes up.
Yeah, how many nodes does BitTorrent have?
How many nodes are in DHT? By 2013, The mainline DHT ranged from 16 to 28 million. So that was kind of in the height of
So that's interesting. I'm looking at a
P2P
GitHub thread
world.
that says that around 300 to 360 nodes total.
In the BitTorrent DHT or the mainline DHT? What did you refer to specifically?
I said the thing. So let me just share my screen again.
Yeah.
Share screen.
Some questions, Reddit.
Entire screen share.
I wonder what the difference is between BitTorrent specifically, Kademlia implementations, the mainline individual clients might connect to. I'm talking about how many are available on the network. So it says current estimates.
Can you share what you're looking at?
Yeah. And this is a Perplexity summary, so it's wrong sometimes as far as like accuracy.
Because I did a network chart recently where I was comparing the Bitcoin network to other large networks like the internet and the electricity grid. And the network I found with the most nodes had around I think 120,000. But I also thought I looked at BitTorrent in my little chart. Let me actually go look at it.
So there's WikiWand and Diva Portal. We focus on mainline DHT, which with up to 9.5 million nodes is probably the largest DHT overlay deployed on the internet. So at least based on some...
Yeah. Can you go back to the previous thing? I want to do the same. So you're using perplexity.ai. Can you send me the link that you search this? And is...
Yeah, can you actually just do this, get this search result? I think I might.
If you share it, I think I might be able to click it, or else it'll tell me to like sign up for Perplexity or something. But I want to investigate this and find out. It strikes me as who are 2 million people or 10 million people, it said, running this software.
I think those are old numbers. I don't the 10 million. I think this is probably a website from a long time ago. This is a PDF, so this is a published thing from a different day.
It's 3 orders of magnitude higher than the count of Tor, which is really surprising, and I don't believe it. So I want to investigate.
The 1 million number, around 1 million, was what I read in an article recently, and that was, I think the article was published sometime late last year. But I mean, 1 million is a big number, so you're right that there's reason to be skeptical of it.
I can't read these links because the Perplexity wants me to sign up for it. So, but we shouldn't be doing this on the podcast
I'll export
time anyway.
The list. You can like export a.
We shouldn't be doing this on the podcast anyway.
That's
we can do this later.
We'll talk about this afterward. But it's interesting nonetheless, and I think it's safe to say the mainline DHT is probably one of the biggest. May very well be the most censorship resistant network that you could publish public information on for people to access, and then you can update it. It still seems to me like when the onus is when the person who other people are trying to connect to can update one thing of their own accord, and they're the only one who can do it because they have the key that can sign for it, and then the network in which that information can be accessed by anyone, and is extremely difficult to shut down, possibly the most difficult to shut down of networks. That feels like the best case scenario for a potential solution to the DNS problem if we're worried about that degree of censorship, because it means the users can simply use that key, and by default, their client speaking that Bakar or pair stack, whatever it is, language, can always just find wherever that information is. So it would be like if the Pirate Bay didn't have to set up a whole bunch of mirrors, and they didn't have to do piratebay.se, piratebay.org, piratebay.whatever, and then you have to go search for where's the new one. Is that whatever I've just pasted, let's say, their key into the address bar, and every single time it just went to their new location that they signed, so I knew it was them, and they're the only one who can update it, and their website just always showed up no matter when it got censored, because they always had something hosted somewhere in the world that was accessible. So it is a little bit of a hacky solution because it's kind of like a layer on top. And it still may use DNS if you wish to use that. But it seems very, very interesting in the context of where I think one of the trade-offs or limitations to Nostr is, and it seems like a more complete solution to that. And both the pair stack and PubKey use that model, though PubKey is the one that uses mainline DHT, whereas
which is
pair
the
stack
bigger.
has a much smaller network.
If the DHT nodes were privately known, if they weren't shared publicly,
you could do them over Tor.
well, yeah, but then you're relying on
stacking our
the directory
problems.
nodes. Yeah. Often, I mean, that is a solution. Like it works. The Tor nodes promise not to censor anything, and so far they seem to be keeping their promise. But how long can you rely on that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe forever, but probably not. Anyway, it's worked for now. But what I was saying was, if they were shared privately, if you only found out about the DHT nodes by someone telling you this is an IP address you can connect to, then it wouldn't be automated. It would be a manual process to find someone, which is the worst case scenario in Nostr.
Mm-hmm.
If they're public, then it surprises me that they're not just on an automatic ban list in countries like China and in like public libraries and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It surprises me that they're not just automatically banned, because if the list is public, I imagine any library or any public network is not going to want people to be connecting to them through them, because who wants to be downloading illegal movies in my coffee shop or whatever? So if that's happening, then you back to the private one. Like the only way you can actually connect to them, if they're all publicly known, is by asking for ones that aren't publicly known, and then you're at the Nostr worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I don't know. It sounds like there's millions of these nodes, and it's just too much hassle to put them all on a ban list. I'm skeptical of this claim.
That's certainly the concept behind why it's done the way it is because you have to block out entire sections of IP addresses because they will aggregate into blobs based on where they are in the DHT rather than their actual IP address. So you'll get this huge range of IP addresses that randomly come in and out of different parts of the DHT. I tried to make sense of this for the audience is probably confused as hell, but there's an episode where we talk about how the DHT works, and we just kind of like go down a technical rabbit hole for that. And there's a couple fantastic videos that do such a good job of making it easy to picture on YouTube. So I'll have the links to that if a bunch of people are going, what the hell are y'all talking about?
So part of the thing that this illustrates that privacy is hard.
Yes, it does.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it absolutely does.
If you are confused, that's because it's really difficult to do things in a privacy-preserving manner, especially if you're also trying to create a public network. It's hard to navigate. I want a public network, but I also want to be private. Mm-hmm. I want to be a node in a public network and also be private. One thing that I think is overlooked, I recently thought of this privacy characteristic of the Lightning Network that I don't think anyone's talked about, and I think it's been overlooked. So your listeners can be the first ones to hear about this. You can delete your Lightning transactions. So unlike a blockchain is an append-only database, and every transaction that gets stored on a blockchain is stored there forever. Lightning transactions don't go on a blockchain. Where do they go? A SQL database. And what's great about SQL databases they're not append-only. They have a delete function. So you can turn off your Lightning node, open up its database in any SQL editor, and say, select all, delete. And you're deleted your transaction history, which is a wonderful privacy tool. Can't do that on a blockchain. So one of the things I want to do is actually do that and in like a workshop, be like, how to gain privacy on the Lightning Network. Delete. I don't have a transaction history. What are you talking about? So that'd be a really fun thing. And then it's a trick that you can do when you're not using a blockchain to store your transaction history.
Yeah, that's another major thing, is that because the blockchain is just infinitely stored. So maybe you have privacy now, but in 10 years, who knows what people figure out or, backtrace like how the technology works or whatever. And suddenly they do find some sort of an exploit, and now they can figure out, and you've got a permanent record to dig through. Whereas Lightning, you, like you said, cut your Lightning node off or just refresh your, you at least need the transaction history in order to enforce. Well, I guess you only need the
You only need the
secrets.
pre-image and the transaction ID.
Yeah. So you actually don't need a lot of the data. You could delete a ton
You don't
of it.
need the timing info. You don't need the balance info.
You just need to watch for new transactions. So you're pretty good. You need pre-image and a hash. That's it. But other than that, you could also get rid of the pre-images and the hashes just by refreshing your channel, which costs you 1 fee on the Bitcoin network. So it's very easy to keep everything live and securely delete all of your history and never need it again.
Now, this is a difference with Monero. The reason this occurred to me was I was reading about, in many of the cases that I published on MoneroLeaks.xyz, the way they traced them was they arrested the guy for some other reason. Like they found him with drugs in possession, for example. One of the guys is a drug dealer, and they found him with drugs in possession, so they arrested him. While they were doing a search of like his house, they found a Monero wallet and discovered that on this guy's computer there was this Monero wallet, and he was running the drug market that they were after. And they were like, "Wow, we got it!" So that was like one of the cases where it was like I don't know, it's on MoneroLeaks.xyz. And so when I posted this as an example of tracing Monero, this is one of the things the Monero people got mad about. They were like, they didn't trace him. They found him because he had drugs on him. Like, that's not Monero's fault that he got caught because of that. And then they just looked up his transaction history because they got his private keys. Like, how is Monero supposed to help you if they get your private keys? And so I go back to, the thing is, Monero's designed so that you publish all your transactions on a blockchain. And because you do that, your private keys have a cryptographic tie to every transaction you've ever made. And that's bad for privacy. If you use Lightning, then you don't have that, and you can actually regularly delete your transaction history. And I actually do. So I was thinking, what if this happened to me? If I got arrested for something, and then they searched my computer and found my Lightning wallet, what would they find on there? And I was like, well, the things that I mostly use Lightning for, or that I very often use Lightning for, are experiments where I will think of some new idea. I will create a Lightning wallet, buy a channel, do some test transactions, make a video about it, and then I'll delete that wallet. Like, I don't need it anymore. So I will actually get rid of it and get rid of that whole transaction history, get rid of the channel, move the funds to somewhere else because I don't want them on an experimental node. And I'm like, so if that happened to me, if I got arrested and then they searched and found a Lightning wallet, they would find like 2 or 3 transactions on it and nothing else. Like, they wouldn't have my whole history. So I was like, that's interesting. And so no one really talks about this thing that you can do on Lightning, which is like, just by changing wallets, you delete your transaction history, which is very easy to do. And looking further into it, I found that there's a plugin for Core Lightning called AutoClean that will do this on a schedule. You can schedule it to automatically delete your transaction history, and it'll add a command so that at any moment you can just say, delete this transaction from my history, and it'll do it, which is really cool. So
that's pretty dope. I did not know about that. I like that a lot.
I know. So, like, part of why I do this stuff is to bring awareness, because even Bitcoiners are like, sometimes when they read through the stuff on Monero Leaks, they're like, some of these examples, like, he got the private key. How is that Monero's fault? I'm like, it's because it's Monero's fault that your private keys are permanently attached to your transaction history. And on Lightning, they're not. So then I bring up something like AutoClean, and Bitcoiners are like, oh, I didn't know we could do this. I didn't know this is a feature of Lightning privacy, is that you can delete your transaction history securely.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. I'm definitely going to have to do a link for that one for anybody who wants to check that out, because I can probably do that on like my Start9 or something pretty easily. One
of the guys on who I was debating with concerning Monero, he said, you can do a similar thing with Monero. Like, although your transaction histories are permanently on the blockchain, your private keys are not necessarily permanently in your possession. So what you could do is rotate to a new Monero wallet and then delete your Monero private keys. And then you'd be in a similar situation. All of that history, well, it would be on the blockchain. It wouldn't be connected to you because your private key is gone, which is true. And that's a thing that I would, if I was in the Monero community, I would recommend people do that. But the Monero software is built around the assumption that you keep your private keys forever. For example, they have this very commonly used feature called a contact list, where every time you give someone your Monero address, it asks, typical wallet software will ask you do you want to save this as a contact for that person, so that if you want to send them money in the future, you don't have to get an address from them?
Suck if you change your
Yeah,
address and a whole bunch of people have you as contacts and they
it would
send
suck. But
send
Lightning
Monero
doesn't have
into
this problem,
yeah.
because on Lightning, your private keys have to be available to co-sign your transactions. And when someone sends you money, you have to sign a revocation key revoking the old state in your Lightning channel. So if you delete your Lightning private keys after moving your funds out, it's secure. No one can send you money now at that channel because you can't sign to update the state. So it's actually secure on Lightning to delete your private keys, and it's not on Monero because they encourage address reuse. Of course, Monero people will say address reuse isn't a thing on Monero because Monero addresses use similar technology to silent payments. But it still is, there is address reuse because it's non-interactive. They don't have to, if you give someone your Monero address, in order to do the silent payments trick, they don't need to interact with you. They can just do it on their own and send money to that key, not knowing you deleted it. That's why in the Monero community, it's like, never delete your private keys. Someone might have you in a contact list and you might lose money, or they might lose money and you, because they tried to send you money.
Yeah. Which you can keep the exact same private keys, refresh your channel in Lightning, and okay, you're good to go. You never have to worry about it. And yeah.
But even if you don't know how to use core Lightning and install a plugin, you can safely delete your channel, close your channels, migrate to a new wallet, and then delete the old wallet, and that's secure. You're not going to lose money by doing that, because on Lightning, no one can send you money unless you co-sign. So they have to send you your new channel anyway. That's just a really cool feature.
Whatever happened to keysend?
It's still a thing, but even with keysend
was dope. I loved keysend.
You can still do it.
Do most wallets support it? Because I feel like I never see it anywhere.
I don't think. No, probably most wallets don't. Most wallets want you to get an invoice from the guy.
Yeah.
In theory, though, you could. I think there are some wallets that still do it, but you can, if you know someone's node public key, you can send it on the protocol level. You can still do keysend, so you could just design a wallet that lets you.
Yeah.
But even with keysend, though, if you send someone's public key, they still have to do a state update in their channel in order to receive that money, or else it'll just fail. So if they deleted that key, it's still safe. Like, you could try to do a keysend, and if they don't have the keys, it'll just fail.
Yeah.
Then neither party loses money.
Yeah. Yeah. See, Monero needs Nostr or pub key contacts so that they can update their private keys and still be found.
So these are what I'm trying to draw attention to, the fact that these privacy technologies exist on Lightning, and a lot of people, even some of the people who made these technologies, didn't realize that they're privacy solutions. I don't think the AutoClean guys were thinking about deleting your transaction history as a privacy measure. I think they were doing it to save database storage, because Lightning databases can get really big if you're like running a merchant node. So that's why I think they did it. But it's also a really cool privacy feature that they just didn't think of. It's like, or at least I don't think they thought of it.
It wasn't under that context, but it's actually very, very helpful in that context. So yeah. It's interesting. You also talked about a couple of projects that you've been working on. What was one of them started with like a P or something that you said I might be interested in? Break down what else you've been building, because you're always doing something new.
Hang on, let me go to my
GitHub.com. See, you don't even know what all you built. See,
it's true. I'm always building stuff, and I don't. It's not always top of mind. So the topmost item on my GitHub repository is called Shred Forums.
Okay. Yes, you did mention that one too.
Yeah. So Shred Forums is my version of Stacker News. Have you ever used Stacker News, Guy?
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
I kind of think about it like a Reddit Nostr partner sort of thing. Like I go up there just to kind of see like what's kind of the new thing. It's just one of the places that I go to think about getting news or see what people are talking about in Bitcoin, basically.
I often used it when researching for my bit devs in Mexico. There's a big technical community on Stacker News. And so I would go there and I would find the recent technical topics. I would sort by, the top posts of the month, and I'd go through and like that. And it's cool to talk about it through bit devs. Anyway, Stacker News is great for that. And it's also great for arguing with people. You can get into long threads where you go back and forth about stuff like what we're talking about today. But a cool feature of Stacker News is that content was always gated by having to pay a Lightning invoice every time you wanted to post something. And that made it so there's very little spam on the network, or on not network, just on that website. There's very little spam because you have to pay in order to post, and then people can reward you. So if you make a good post, you recoup the cost of posting it. But if you're a spammer, you just lose money, and then you go away. That's the great thing about Stacker News.
Yeah.
But they changed. Because Lightning has poor reliability of actually getting a payment completed. Stacker News made a custodial wallet where the users would manage all the funds, and they would just do internal payments. Around the time when the Tornado Cash devs got arrested, they started phasing out their custodial wallet. And we want to move to a non-custodial option. But there was a problem with moving to a non-custodial option, is that as soon as they tried to get users doing that, payments started failing. And then once the payments started failing, the quality of the network suffered because you couldn't actually pay to post if your payment fails. So your post doesn't work. And if you're trying to reward someone for a good post and your payment fails, they don't get the reward. So what they ended up doing was moving to a credit system where you buy credits, and then those credits are internally transferable, but you can't withdraw them as Bitcoin. And so they made this credit system that was their workaround for this. But now, when I started logging into Stacker News after this credit system was in place, there was a big buy credits button that was very prominently featured, and it was all about cowboy credits. Now they called them cowboy credits. It was buy cowboy credits. There were people selling cowboy credits. There was a market for trading cowboy credits against Bitcoin. And I was this feels very altcoiny. I've been on altcoin discussion forums that are the exact same thing as this, except they use an altcoin instead of a credit system. So I wanted something that has the way Stacker News was before they introduced cowboy credits, where it wasn't as reliable, but it was self-custodial, and they weren't shilling credits all the time. So that's what Shred Forums is. Yeah. It's my own version of Stacker News, my own alternative website to that, where you have to pay to post, and mine's open source. You can put in any, if you self-host Shred Forums, you can put in any Lightning address as the recipient of the payments people have to post.
What's the URL?
But it's just, I will just share it in there. It's not, not,
super speakable.
It isn't ready yet. It's not ready yet.
Oh, gotcha. It's a GitHub.
But I build in the open, so there's you can just see me testing the website, and then one of their guys posting on there, and you'll see a lot of errors on the website. Anyway, the idea is I wanted a free and open source variant of Stacker News where anyone could replace, instead of the money going to Keon's node, they could just set up any Lightning address as the recipient of the funds for paying to post. And then once again, it would be just you can zap people and make comments, and everything's gated by having to make a sacrifice to make your post. So that's what it's supposed to be. It's not really working, or some functions are working and some aren't yet. But anyway, I've been working on that. So that's one of my Nostr based projects.
Sweet.
So what else do I got?
Trying this. I'm paying an invoice right now.
Okay, it's a 10 sat invoice, and it gets you 30 posts. So be aware of that. Yeah. And the money goes to me right now. What I was hoping to do when it's ready is I was gonna set it to go to OpenSats, and it would make it a higher amount. So it'd be pay 100 or 1,000 sats to get 30 posts, and then all that money would go to OpenSats, which would be much cooler. But
that's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's free and open source, and so you can just put in any Lightning address as the recipient of the funds, which is neat. And then all the clients would just honor whatever that parameter is. So one of the projects I did that you'd probably be more interested in too, especially since you're talking about privacy, is Lightning Blinder. So that was a project where I wanted to prove Phoenix wrong, Phoenix Wallet. So okay. when I talk about Lightning privacy with the Monero people, and I say Lightning has better privacy than Monero, they will often say, "What wallet do you recommend?" And I always say Phoenix. Phoenix is the best Lightning wallet. And then they will say, if you go to Phoenix's website, they have a FAQ about privacy. Phoenix Wallet, where is their website? I'll post it in your chat. They have an FAQ. Here it is. And in their FAQ, they have a privacy section. How private are my payments on Phoenix? And it says, the current version of Phoenix offers no advantage regarding privacy over existing hosted custodial wallets. We, async, know the final destination and amount of payments. And I wanted to prove them wrong.
I was about to say, that's technically not true with LM proxy.
I don't think
just using LM proxy, right?
If you use LM proxy, then they don't know the destination. So I issued one of my challenges to async. I said, hey, async, you claim that you know the destination of payments. Well, I made a payment. Tell me the destination. And so they replied to my thread and they said, we don't know the destination of your payment. We don't know if you're using a proxy, then we don't know the destination. I was like, well, that's great. So the statement on your website is wrong. But also, you can never know if someone's using a proxy because proxy software is free and open source. You could be running one. I could be running one. 10 million people could be running one. The person that looks like you're paying might just be a proxy, and they have no way of knowing. So I made software called Lightning Blinder, where you can run proxy software on a cell phone. And I made it so that you can even use
that's dope.
You can even use Phoenix Wallet as the routing node that you're routing payments through. So,
oh man, that would be cool. So I could like open up my own channel with Phoenix and then literally use kind of like combine Phoenix's payment reliability and use it as a
routing node. Yeah.
As a routing node.
So Phoenix also will tell you, I don't know if this is in their fact, but they claim they don't support routing. They claim you can't route through Phoenix Wallet. There's no routing logic. If someone tries to open a channel to you, it'll just fail. But they're wrong. They're wrong that it doesn't support routing because it has a send button and a receive button, and that means it supports atomic swaps.
Yeah, because it's LM proxies in an invoice. You can just do this in an invoice.
So you can, that's exactly correct. So I made software that does the routing logic separately and just asks Phoenix Wallet to pay an invoice or create an invoice, and then it doesn't need routing logic because I'm doing it separately in this separate app. So that's what Lightning Blinder is. It makes it so that you can have Phoenix Wallet and Lightning Blinder running on your phone. Your phone will sometimes get a notification and it'll be like, hey, bling, and you look at it and it's like someone wants to route a payment worth $10 through your wallet. Do you want to do this? You'll get 15 sats or whatever your fee is. And you'd be like, sure. And it'll ask you to create an invoice for them to pay and then pay an invoice. And that's how it works. And
it just totally does it in just like the top, the software on top. I
just do all the routing logic and all the creation of the atomic swaps and the verification of the swap was done correctly. I do all of that separately. And so that means you can route payments through Phoenix Wallet. And I was like, not only do you not know if the person is receiving money, you also don't know if they're sending money because they might just be forwarding a payment using Lightning Blinder because you can run that on your phone and make money, which is great.
That is so cool.
But you can also hook it up to any Lightning wallet that can send and receive payments. And because all Lightning payments are atomic swaps, that means all wallets support atomic swaps, and therefore you can route through them.
You can do whatever you want with it. Yeah,
you can do. Yeah.
This also gets me with this whole like this is kind of part of the conversation about like smart contracts and needing like all of this like new capabilities and stuff with the blockchain and needing order books and all this stuff. And all I can think is that like, with Taproot assets and Lightning, when it comes to just in the context of like stable coins, is that the fact that the buyer and the seller, all they have to do is agree on a price and you have atomic swaps built in. You don't need some service provider and some giant order book or a blockchain managing this. Because you can literally do it in the Lightning invoice for whatever the swap amount is, and then settle it in sats, even if you have totally different currencies on either end of it. And suddenly you're like that's a live market for currency swapping where you don't even have to know if the other person is swapping a currency. So just like you were saying that like you don't know where the payment is going to because they could be using Lightning Blinder or LM proxy or something. You also don't know if they're receiving stablecoin. You also don't know if they're receiving Tether or Iranian, the Iranian currency, or something.
Reals.
Like it could be literally be anything on the other end of it, and you're fulfilling a payment for that. So you can't even sanction a currency if there's like a stable coin on the other end, because you don't know where it's going to or what it's being fulfilled with, because you can atomic swap through the sats invoice, and all they ever see are sats to the next node, and that's it.
Yeah, in the cases that I've examined, it has never seemed to matter, or it's never come up that it mattered which currency the recipient received. It was always just, did they receive any value at all for an illegal good or service? But also, I'm only looking at criminal cases because those are the ones that are where information's publicly available.
Yeah.
There's also like corporate level tracing where where corporations want to find out your transaction history so they can serve you ads and just get a better profile on you for credit history and credit scores and stuff. And so I always have to catch myself when I'm thinking about these cases. I'm always thinking, how would you solve a government attack? But it's not just that. How the corporations would probably care what currency you're using. That would be part of their profile on you. So guarding against that is also a consideration.
Yeah. Been going for quite a bit, and I don't want to take up like a ton of your time, but we haven't even gotten to filters.
Oh yeah, it's true. Well, I've got time, so if you want to,
you got time. All right. Well,
you can make 2 episodes
without adding a whole nother hour to this, or if it seems like this rabbit hole is going to be ridiculous. But I wanted to get your take on it because you're one of the people that I trust in Bitcoin. There's probably like maybe 10 people that I trust in Bitcoin to always have their own opinion about a thing, and it never perfectly aligns with other people. So I want to get your take on the whole filter thing, on knots versus core, the whole kind of datum and stratum v2 and how that plays into this. Like, what's kind of your big picture? How do you think about this whole problem? How do you frame it in your mind before you start making assessments about individual pieces of it?
Let me do an assessment about an individual piece of it first.
Okay. Start there. That's fine. We're big or small to big. I don't care.
The thing that I like best about the filter debate, I do. My position on the filter debate is that I'm in favor of the filters and want to keep the ones that limit spam.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I like best about this whole debate is it's getting people to run nodes. So people haven't been looking at what node software they're running probably ever in Bitcoin. They just download Bitcoin Core. Now they're actually like, maybe I should be running different software. They're like taking a look. They're seeing who's developing these things. They're checking their credentials. That's good. Like that should have been something we were doing, or people were doing all along. And now they're doing it because there's drama about this Bitcoin, about this not fork, this op-return stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing is like, it's cool to see the knots count go up, but it's even cooler to see the total node count go up and just people deciding I'm going to run a node now. So because of this drama. But yeah, I'm in favor of the filters. I think they help. Recently, there was someone who posted a huge spam letter on the blockchain using op-returns, and I don't know exactly what it was about. I think it has to do with Islam and like why Islam is bad. Anyway, this letter that she posted took her a really long time to figure out how to do it. Part of her letter explains how she did it, because before this she wasn't a programmer, but apparently she like asked an AI. She wanted to post this long letter about I think it's about Islam. Parts of it are about Islam. I think it's like a cultural manifesto or something. She wanted to post this thing. Asked an AI how to do it, and it was like, you can post messages and data using op-returns. And then she was like, okay, help me make a transaction that does this. She like bought some Bitcoin, put it in an address, created this really long op-return, and tried to post it, and it didn't work. Bitcoin rejected it because of the filters. They say you're not allowed to have op-returns that are larger than 80 bytes. So then, in order to get around that, it was kind of a cool story. She learned to code. Like she had the AI teach her how to split her UTXO into multiple chunks. She tested it on RegTest.
Oh, interesting.
Where she split her letter into 80-byte chunks, each of which was attached to a different like UTXO. And then she tested it on RegTest, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. Way better than most actual Bitcoin developers. Yeah. Way better than me. I just go straight to like Signet or something.
You just...
I lose Signet coins all the time doing tests on Signet. And it's fine. That's also what those are for. Anyway, she did it the right way and actually tested it on her own node first. And then eventually she got something that worked, and she did it with real Bitcoin, and she posted this long letter on the blockchain. But the cool thing about this was people will say the filters don't work because people can post as much data as they want using like op-return bot or Libra relay that have these deals with miners and like private mempools. But I think her case, where she actually wrote a letter about how she did it, proves that the filters do work. And she didn't know about those tools. She didn't know that there were private mempools that she could submit her transaction to. She just saw, I tried to do a thing, it didn't work, and so I had to learn to code in order to make her transaction to match what the filters were expecting. So I think that proves the filters work. So they have an effect. Most spammers aren't motivated enough to go through all of that. If they try it and it doesn't work, they're just gonna, okay, it didn't work, and they'll try something else. They'll do something else with their time. But yeah, this girl demonstrates that when spammers say, or when the anti-filter people, the spam fans say filters don't work, here's a case where they did.
Yeah. And what's funny is that I don't understand the logic or the failure to recognize the simple logic that was a success of the filters, when they'll point to the fact that it still got published to the chain and they're like, it didn't work. Like the purpose of a filter is not to 100% stop a thing. It's to add a marginal cost to poor use of the thing. Like Hashcash didn't stop you from getting spam. It just made it so that if you were honest and you were working within the spam, you weren't actually spamming, that it was easy and everything worked normally and you didn't have to think about it or do a whole bunch of work. But if you were spamming, it cost something. That there is a marginal cost to actually doing it. So this case is a perfect example of she actually had to be very motivated and find alternative ways to accomplish something, because it didn't just normally work without any friction, because specifically her message was a form of spam. It was not using Bitcoin for the purpose of Bitcoin. And I think it also makes perfect sense when people are like, oh, spam is subjective, you can't know. It's like, well, that's exactly why it makes sense to let node runners make that decision, because they're the ones maintaining the information and the relaying of that information on the network. That's the person who gets to decide what is spam in their context. And that all that seems perfectly intuitive to me. Like the fact that she got in has nothing to do with whether or not the filters work. The cost to get into the network of putting that out there is the determination as to whether or not they worked. And the very post itself is an indication that it did in fact work. It added a significant marginal cost that she had to go way out of her way, and something that took paragraphs of explanation as to how it worked just to get in,
just to bypass the filter, or not bypass, just to be compatible with the filter, I guess is the way to put it.
And I don't understand not recognizing that, when I feel like all the people who are on that side of the argument would actually 100% recognize the fact that is a simple logic that does prove exactly the case in any other context. But it's like, it can't be allowed in this because somehow the suggestion of just recognizing one simple fact of it doesn't immediately mean that one group is right and one is not. But absolutely on that issue, yes, filters add a marginal cost, like that doesn't mean that your argument is null and void, but argue the things that actually are real, like there are good arguments still for not having filters, even if you admit that there's a marginal cost to adding them,
Yeah. So one factor in this, I think it's very easy for programmers to forget how specialized their knowledge is. So like, it's very easy for me to bypass the filters. I know the existing tool. I've probably written, I think I have written some private mempool software, and like I've worked on some of this stuff. So I know how to do it. And it's if you're in this space, you can be like, it's no real difficulty at all. Like there are websites for it, and there's easy tools for it. There's forums on how to do it. But for most people who come into this space, they don't have that. They don't have that background of knowing those things exist. They're going to download a wallet. They're going to, if their wallet has like a message utility, which most don't even have a message. Most wallets don't support op return to begin with. But if their wallet does support op return, it's going to have the default filters built in almost always. Like the amount of wallets that let you create really long ones, I think is zero. I don't think there is a wallet that lets you do it. I think there's just some websites that let you do it. And like I watched Peter Todd do it one day when he was having a debate with me, or not a formal debate, but we were like sitting next to each other at a conference arguing about filters. And he was like, look how easy it is. And he gets on his computer, opens up Libre Relay, opens up his command line utility, types in the message, hits enter, then configures. He's like, oh, wait, I forgot to set the right fee. I have to check what the right fee rates are currently. Then 3 minutes later, look, it was easy. like, yeah, for us, it's easy, but most
for
people aren't.
Peter Todd, for the dude that HBO thinks is freaking Satoshi. Like, that's not, not in the realm of reality for 99.9% of the people that we are talking about and concerned about using this maliciously.
So like many developers don't see how much background knowledge they have that makes it so that for them, there are no filters because they know how to contact miners directly or use the software that automates some of that. But like most people just don't know how to do that. And so adding a bit of friction and saying, here's all the wallets, almost all the wallets respect the filters. And so it makes it so that there's less spam on the blockchain. If you remove the filters, then likely the default behavior of wallets forthcoming, if they have op return feature, which they probably, most of them still won't. But if they do add that feature, it'll be, you can do any size because Bitcoin lets you now. Or, by default, it's easy now. Don't have to go through special tools. So yeah, I think it has a poor effect. But on the bright side, just opening up a debate around it has gotten people to run nodes, and that is a good effect that is, in my opinion, more important than the bad effect of removing the filters. So so yeah, it's there's that. We can all be happy that more people are running nodes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's I guess way too subjective, but it would be interesting to think about, like, okay, considering we only had like 50, 60,000 nodes on the network, right? Like if you could add 10,000 nodes and kind of make the base, the core, no pun intended, the core of Bitcoin more secure and more decentralized and run in more locations around the world.
Let's have a filter debate all the time.
Horrible filter debate in a permanent state, just so that we can get more people to care about it and run nodes, just so that we can get more nodes on the network for no other reason.
Constant node drama would make a really important number go up in Bitcoin. So
constant node drama is Bitcoin's path to resiliency and sovereignty. Oh my God!
Never let it get boring in here.
No. Always angry, always fighting, always running
taking
alternative
sides.
Clients.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we've gone through some of my latest projects. I forget what the one is that I told you I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, there was another one. I feel like.
Yeah, I'm looking through
Shred forums.
Papa swaps.
Papa swaps. That's the one. I told you it started with a P.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. So Papa swaps are also a repo on my GitHub, although this one does not have any code on my GitHub. I actually accidentally deleted the code base like last week. I ran the RM command on my home directory by accident, thinking I was deleting a direct. Well, I was doing what I was talking about. I'd done one of my lightning experiments, didn't need the wallet anymore, was trying to delete it, had a typo, and accidentally deleted my code base for Papa swaps.
And now it's gone forever. Anything. Now you can't even find it.
I'll just rewrite it. I could have like done hard drive recovery stuff, but I didn't. It didn't take me that long to write, so I'll just write it again. Yeah. Anyway, the protocol description is on my GitHub, and now you just have to implement it. So what they are is an improvement, I think, on submarine swaps. So have you ever used submarine swaps on the Lightning Network or on the base layer?
No, yeah. I guess I would have done it when I've swapped to Liquid, and then also there's like isn't it submarine swaps if you're doing the Lightning market thing for liquidity?
Lightning market thing for liquidity. Like liquidity ads?
Liquidity ads. Isn't that I think that's the one. Wait,
Well,
no,
I don't
no.
know if liquidity. It would benefit from using them, but I don't know if they actually use them in the core Lightning's implementation. I doubt it.
No, doubtedly, undoubtedly, I feel like I have done submarine swaps in
Yeah.
some context. Yeah, I swap stuff.
One person surprised me recently by talking about how they use submarine swaps. They were talking about a frustration they had with Phoenix Wallet, which to me is not a frustration, but is a joy, which is on Phoenix Wallet, if I have money on, like Phoenix Wallet gives you a single unified balance between Lightning and base layer. Everything's on Lightning on Phoenix Wallet. But they support splicing in and splicing out. So if I want to pay someone on the base layer, I just scan a regular Bitcoin address and hit pay, and we'll do a single transaction, splice out, and it'll go on the base layer. I think it's great. But I was talking to someone recently, and they were like, I hate Phoenix Wallet. I hate that Phoenix Wallet does that, because every time I send to someone on the base layer, my inbound capacity drops. And now I can receive less money on Lightning, or if someone sends me more than I have inbound capacity for, I have to pay a new fee for that. It's like, they found it annoying. And they said, so the workaround for me is submarine swaps. They go to Bolts Exchange, which is a submarine swap provider.
Yeah.
And they say, they paste in the address they want to pay. It'll give them a Lightning invoice. They use Phoenix Wallet to pay the Lightning invoice. That means their capacity stays the same. It just changes your balance on your side of the channel versus your counterparty side of the channel. But the total capacity stays the same. And then Bolts Exchange will send money to the base layer address. Well, so this person said this, and I was like a little bit blown away. I was like, to me, the fact that I don't have to go to Bolts Exchange in order to do this is a huge benefit. If I want to send someone money, I can just do it straight from Phoenix Wallet, and it's cheaper because a splice is only one transaction, whereas Bolts Exchange is two transactions. They have to set up the submarine swap, which involves putting money into a base layer address. And then once you pay the Lightning invoice, you get a secret called a pre-image that you can use to take the money out of that Bitcoin address and send it to your intended recipient. So it's always two transactions on Bolts Exchange. And then a light bulb clicked. I was like, there's a way to do submarine swaps with only one transaction instead of two. So I wrote a specification on my GitHub for how to do it, and I wrote most of the code base before I deleted it. And I thought of a way to do the reverse, to do if you have money on Lightning and you go to the base layer, Papa Swaps will let you do that in one single transaction instead of requiring two. But also, I thought of a way to do the reverse, where if you have money on the base layer and you want to go to Lightning, you can. Well, actually, I didn't think of this way. I found a document by Lightning Labs in which they outlined a way to do this that they also haven't implemented. But the result is it's a two-way protocol. You can do both. You can do from Lightning to the base layer in one transaction, or from the base layer to Lightning in one transaction, without changing your outbound capacity like a splice does. So that's Papa Swaps, and there you can read about it right now. But I haven't. I only half implemented it, and then I deleted it. So someone else will have to do it, or I'll have to get interested enough again to actually finish my implementation, or restart and then finish my implementation.
That's hilarious. That's some I build too much privilege right there. Is that I accidentally deleted the whole thing, but it doesn't matter, because if I get interested in it again, and I'll just write it. I'll just write the whole app again in like a couple hours.
Well, I also tried to get the guy from Bolts Exchange is, I think he's definitely he's got the chops to do it. So I told him to take a look at the protocol, and I thought maybe he would implement it, but he didn't seem to like it. So I don't think he's going to do it. But then I'll just do
that would be helpful.
Well, that's what I said. It would, because half of his costs go to creating these swap transactions, and he has to pass those costs on to his users. And so what he competes with is the non-atomic swap services like Fixed Float and Change Now, and these other ones that will do it. They only do it in one transaction, but it's just custodial. You just send them the Bitcoin, and then they pay a Lightning invoice, or you pay a Lightning invoice, and then they pay a Bitcoin address. It only involves one base layer transaction, so that's who he's competing against. But of course, those services go down all the time to take their users' money, which he can't do. If he goes down, users don't lose anything, which is great. But so the way that my protocol works, it involves new things that he doesn't currently support. It involves pre-signed transactions. What you basically do is you prepare to fund a Lightning channel, or it doesn't end up going on chain, but like you prepare to fund a Lightning channel and you prepare a force closure of that Lightning channel. And then you just end up you do a transaction cut through and you just end up broadcasting the one transaction, the finalization thing. And if at any phase anyone stops cooperating, then you go through the path of actually creating the channel and then doing the force closure from it. But the result is only one transaction goes on chain in the happy path. But he was like, it's a really complicated thing to set up a Lightning channel in the browser for your user. The Mutiny guys learned about that. And it's just like you have to have pre-signed transactions. You have to have the user store them somehow and then come back if something fails. So he said it's just not. He doesn't think it's worth it, so he's not going to do it. But I think it is. I think it saves you 50% and gives you better trust assumptions and lower costs. So I plan to do it.
It's interesting, nonetheless. Like, I would love to see it implemented, even if just for like a beta, to see, okay, how often is this actually a problem for a user? How often does the data get lost, or like, you have to back up something or whatever. But I also think a lot of those sorts of problems can actually be solved in a more like kind of surface layer thing of just like letting someone like making a little blob and then being like, just download, like just so that like when you're making the transaction, just do whatever those important pieces of information are, and then just have it pop up says save this thing, like save this text or save this like thing, and then that's it. And they don't really have to know what it is, but that just have it like, this just is called a backup transaction file. Hash, like all the information that you need, and they can just search it on their file system if they ever need it again. It's like, listen, if you're talking to support, be like, search for this string, and then boom, it comes up.
He actually already does that.
No, I know. I've used bolts, and so they have exactly that. Is that you actually? I think I might have an example right here, right in front of me, because I did this not too long ago, and I actually want to say they have like a little download thing, don't they?
Yeah, I think it's optional.
Bolts rescue key, do not delete .json. No, yeah, that's exactly what they do. I don't understand.
Yeah. So you could put the files that you need for Papa swaps. Yeah. Well, it actually makes it more complicated, but not to the user. The user would still just see a backup file. It would just be slightly larger because it now has a channel open and a channel close transaction in addition to the HTLC that he already has in there. So you could do it, but so yeah, I don't quite get his objection, but whatever, it's fine. If he doesn't want to work on it, then I can just make it. But the other thing that I thought would be cool,
if he doesn't work on it, I'll just fucking make it.
Yeah,
you're an asshole for somebody who I hire people trying desperately to get things built. I hate that you can just build shit so easy.
Well, it's not that easy.
I'll just build it.
It's not that hard. It's not that easy. It just takes me getting interested.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things. I think that's a really cool idea, and it also, so one of the things that has surprised me for a long time. I guess it's taken off now. It took a really long time for exchanges to adopt the Lightning Network, and from the beginning of the Lightning Network, I think by year 2 we had submarine swap services, and I thought that would be how they would integrate it. Because if you use a submarine swap service like Bolts, you can show your users a Lightning invoice or let them insert a Lightning invoice, and your exchange is just doing what it's always done. It's just sending money on the base layer. You're sending it to Bolts exchange, and they're your Lightning provider. I thought that was how they were all going to integrate it. But the only service that ended up using submarine swaps during those early years was Moon. Moon Wallet came out and made a wallet that integrated Lightning in this manner, and they wrote their own submarine swap server to do it, which is cool until fees got really expensive, and then Moon sucked for a while. For like 3 months, it sucked because fees were high, and they have to do 2 transactions whenever they do. Well, not all the time. They also had some things that made it so they reduced the number of transactions they need. But So I always thought exchanges can integrate Lightning pretty easily by just using a submarine swap server, except that it doubles their users' fees, and they have to pass those fees on to their users. So that's what I thought would be useful for this for this Papa Swap stuff. You could remake Moon in a way where it's half the cost of the original Moon. It could work for longer before, like, fees would have to get back into that range, and then like it would just be more efficient. It would still be expensive if fees are high, but it would be half as expensive as Moon, and that's an improvement. But you could have more wallets that do it that way, and you could go back to exchanges and say, now you're not doubling your users' fees when you integrate Lightning the easy way, which is to use the submarine swap API. So I kind of want to do that, and then
it's
see
just
if that
one on-chain
happens.
transaction, whether you're Lightning or you're on-chaining. Like, it's just the same setup. Yeah.
Right. So that's what I want to build that for, and then like see if that goes anywhere. But I guess it's not that big. It's not as big of an issue now because most of the big exchanges do have Lightning now. So so they don't need a workaround to add it. They've just done it. Most of them.
Well, I'm actually going to need to get my son to his nap soon. So this might actually be a good point to close it out on.
Well, we talked about the two things. The three things we want to talk about. So.
Yeah.
There we go.
Dude, thank you for coming on. This was good hanging out, man. Always.
Did not a guy.
Yeah. Are you going to be at BitBlock Boom this year?
I don't think so. They haven't invited me yet. I would like to go. Hey, if anyone at BitBlock Boom was listening, invite me. I'll be happy to come.
Super Testnet.
Is your name pronounced Guy or Guy?
It's Guy.
Okay.
Guy, just like the word. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I've seen people pronounce that when it's a name.
Guy is more common.
Guy
is more common, but I do, like, I've heard of people going by Guy just because of, like, if it's a foreign thing or whatever, they actually have gone by Guy.
In the
US
Superman movie, the Green Lantern is Guy Gardner, and it's Guy for him as well.
Oh,
so
nice. That's funny.
Yeah.
Have you watched the Superman movie? I haven't seen it. Is
it
good?
I thought it was good, but not great. It's a good film. I
That's how
recommend
most
it.
of the Supermans have been most recently.
Right. Good. Before it, because of all the hype, they were hyping it up, and I watched the original Superman, 1978 version, which is a great movie, and so it's definitely not as good as that one, but it is good. It's a good movie.
Well, hell yeah, I might check that out then. Well, dude, thanks for coming on. I got like a bunch of links to do. I think I have most of them, but I'll send you like a message or something if I'm trying to find like some of the relevant links. And I've got you have your in profile. Do you have like a way to get to your GitHub on this? Or
no, but I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, just send it to me. Just send it to me in case
there
I
you
don't
go.
have it.
It's in the chat on
Perfect.
River.fm.
Perfect. All right. I will save all of this so I don't forget it. And sweet. Is there anything else you want to direct people to follow? I guess I have your Impub and stuff because I know your stuff on
supertestnet.org is my website. It's where I post most of my stuff. So
there we go.
You can find my socials and my projects there.
Hell yeah. Dude, thanks for coming on, man.
All right.
This has been a blast.
See you later. Bye.
Yep. Later, boss. All right, guys. Don't forget, I tried to get all of the links that we mentioned. We brought up a whole bunch of stuff in this one, but I tried to get all of them together. I was being thorough, hopefully, about copying them down when we were talking about them. So all of those should be down below. If you heard us mention something, and specifically if you heard us talk about something and there isn't a link, please let me know. I can add it in just to make all that easy to find for everybody. But pretty much everything should be there. Just let me know. A shout out to Testnet, by the way, for joining me. It's always awesome having a conversation with him, and it's good to catch up. He's an awesome dude who builds really cool shit. So also shout out to Ledden for making Bitcoin backed loans freaking easy, and for Chroma for helping me get my sleep and my energy levels and my hormones right, for HRF for keeping me informed on what the hell is going on with all the monetary and financial news around the world that the legacy media literally avoids like the plague. Check out the Financial Freedom Report. That link is also down below. And then lastly, PubKey for building tools to fix the legacy media and the centralized permission platforms that we're all stuck in, and for giving us back our content. Check all of these out. We got discount codes, links, and goodies. These are all tools and services that I'm a big fan of, that I've been using for a long time or been following for a long time, and that I trust. I wouldn't recommend them otherwise. And you'll find all the details right down in the description of this show. And speaking of light health, I'm going to go get my nightshades and shut all this down. It's kind of past time that I should have switched all the gears on that one. So I am out. I'm going to close this up. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next episode of Bitcoin Audible. And until then, everybody, take it easy, guys.